updates. So we're going to try to give you a few updates in addition to the information, repeating the information that we gave you this morning. Now, like someone mentioned yesterday about our boogers being, about whether or not our boogers were fallen angels. And we said, no, that's not accurate, because our update was clarified that your boogers work for the fallen angel. About the best way we could explain this maybe would be to start off by saying there's one real God. There's one real God. And there's one real kingdom of God. Now, the one real God resides in the heavens. And his kingdom is a kingdom not confined to a planet, and circulates in the heavens and is reached only by attaining to a degree of goodness acceptable to that one real God. Now, that means that everything else is not of the one real God. Now, on this planet, there is an individual who was sent to this planet, and who was, in a sense, booted out of the kingdom of heaven. Was sent here at an early stage of this planet's development. This individual was, and that individual, don't forget, had attained to a high degree of development and goodness, but began to look more to his own mind and to listen less and care less about pleasing his father, the chief. And now, since he's been residing on this planet, it has been his primary function to keep the eyes of the offsprings of this planet from knowing the higher elements of truth about the kingdom of heaven. He's trying to make his kingdom here, and his kingdom still is like the highest religious thing, quote religious, quote spiritual thing that can be done aside from pursuing the real kingdom of heaven. In other words, it's a facsimile, it's a copy, it's a deceiver's. Well, you can be satisfied with it. You can easily believe that what he would present to you he could convince you that your job is to act as lords or his angels and to help this planet do as this planet would have it do. Stay on the vibration of this planet. Do the things that this planet vibrates on. Now, the next level, of course, is using that, his existence here, in many ways that they can use it as like it's your catalyst for growth. Let me skip. There's so many facets to this, it's hard to get it in a picture. That's the reason we need to sit with you and try to get it in your head and then have you ask questions and so forth. Now let's, if we have said to you that there is one real God, and He is the God in the literal heavens, then that means if you could, in the purest sense, without the influence of the fallen angel, follow or know the God that assisted Abraham and the Israelites, you would know an element of the true God. You would know. Now, don't forget, the kingdom of heaven has many members. Here's where Christians get confused or thrown off by this influence. When you say there's one true God, and then they think that above human there's one fellow up there, and that's all there is up there, and not realizing that there are many members in that kingdom of heaven. But all of them got there from pleasing the real chief to a degree that they deserved to be there. And that degree was having none of the characteristics that we would call the human characteristics, or the so-called promoted characteristics of this planet. Now you say, well, where does that leave Shintoism, Buddhism, Brahmanism, the Theosophy, the Mahatmas, any religion you can, yogis, all of that, where does that leave them? Are they seeking the true kingdom of heaven? And the answer is no. Their paths, if they master them and continue to develop them, those paths would lead them to the number one deceiver. Now, the ones who formulated their religions after the true kingdom of heaven, or even now the Israelites, even the Jews now still, even though they haven't taken the update, they still are looking to, they think, in theory at least, the true God from the true kingdom of heaven. The Christians, if they were not deceived by those who would pull them away, if they went to the pure teaching of Jesus, they would be attempting to please the true kingdom of heavens. Now, but this other one always comes in to try to keep you from overcoming this planet, and will even lead you on what appear to be advanced religious paths in order to not know the real truth. Now, we must skip to another topic, and we'll come back to this anytime you want to interrupt. This other topic is clarifying your boogers, and clarifying the boogers of other humans. Because we feel that in a better update, that humans don't have those. How does that throw you? The only boogers that humans have across the board, the average human's only booger, is the vehicle that has its ugly nature or its weakened nature, its habits that have been passed down to it through the generations. Now, let's take an average human when he becomes an unaverage human, or if for some reason he shows the potential to become an above average human. There's a reason for a booger. There's a reason for a so-called angel or servant of Lucifer to enter in and use this individual, who is an influential individual. Use him, whether it's his talent in front of the big screen in Hollywood, or if it's because he's the number one evangelist, or whatever he is. If millions look to him, then they can use him to keep the vibrations human. Now, In other words, to teach, go on being human. If it feels good, do it. And indulge in human ways. Even a higher form of that is to don't play around, but take a wife. And you see, that's still a higher form. Don't do these drugs and things, but go this route of all these other practices, like some of the more advanced religions would have you go into their diets and so forth, as if they were really that significant, that important. Don't you know that if your vehicle was really healthy and your mind was really healthy, your diet would be unimportant, because a healthy vehicle could almost turn tin cans into digestible food if the vehicle was really healthy and not under stress and had overcome the weaknesses of that were passed down to it, and the weaknesses that it got on its own through what it engaged in during the lifetime of that vehicle. So humans, as a rule across the board, have only the negative to deal with of the weaknesses of their vehicle. But now, the higher you go in these other religions, you finally reach up to certain techniques that are, you're told the secrets, so to speak, of what they consider the kingdom of heaven to be, which to the next level is pure hell. It's the opposite of the kingdom of heaven, because it's a side window. It's a offshoot that makes it almost impossible for you to ever get out of, to get on the track to the real kingdom of heaven. In other words, their heaven is the astral. They're very, very advanced individuals who are faithful servants of Lucifer, whatever name you want to give him. They learn to leave their body at will, return to their body at will. When their body gets too old or they don't like it, they can discard it and take another one. And they know how to do that. And they have learned how to do it. And Lucifer learned how to do that. But, in other words, the next level knew the techniques of doing that for the right reasons. Lucifer has taught his followers to do that for the wrong reasons. But since he still feels like he's Mr. Good and had every right to use his own mind in opposition to the real God, then his followers look to him as their God and feel that if they perform for him faithfully and well, they shall reach his kingdom. They shall travel in the astral. They shall help the world develop its cultural aspects and its intellectual aspects and all the aspects that humans would consider the higher aspects of their civilization, which in fact all they do is just hold them to the human vibrations. Now, so far, have you got anything? I don't believe it. Yes, you got anything.
Of the spiritual route that Bill was just talking about, they even drill it into your mind that if you ever stop doing this, then it can be extremely dangerous for you. In other words, once you start practicing these things, then they say you should never stop.
That it would be your ruination. It would be.
You see what we're saying? So in a sense, they put the fear in you.
That's right.
Of if once you start, in other words, don't take this route unless you want to go all the way.
It's an unbelievable flip side copy of the next level for wrong reasons. Just like we were talking to you earlier about the fear of the Lord. In other words, they put the fear of the Lord into them, and they believe it, they buy it. And they also know when they reach to very advanced stages, they know that so few people know these ways and these secrets that they automatically feel like they're a part of a very elite company of servants to their God. They have to practice celibacy. They have to practice renunciation as you have practiced renunciation in order to gain these powers that they use to serve their God. And yet their God is not your God. And their heaven is not your heaven. And when Jesus was in the astral outside of his body, while his body was in the tomb, he was in hell. And even while he was in the astral, until he re-entered his body, he was ministering to those who were ignorant. Now you know what is meant in that passage where it said he descended into hell and even ministered to the angels of Satan. Can you understand this? Now, so they are the real ones and the only ones who are in spirit, because they are in the astral. Now that doesn't mean that the next level could not, should they choose, also leave their vehicle. But it tells you what you have to deal with. Because the next level does not appear to you that way. The next level, in order to safeguard you from that, would never appear to you in spirit form. And they tell you, or they help, like they help us, with thoughts. It's a communication that you would never confuse with spirits. Now you think about spirits and you think, well, what about the mediums? What about the spiritualists? What are they in tune to? Are they in tune to these advanced ones who have learned to leave their bodies too? We think primarily they are not, even though they think they are, that spirits are coming in. Primarily what they're in tune with is playing back the tapes of previous incarnations. They're slipping back into the personalities of the incarnations that they had experienced previously. Now that does not mean if they become an influential person with a considerable following that one of these would not choose them to work through. Once you entered this atmosphere, and Lucifer and his helpers knew that you would at this time, because he knew that this age was coming. It had to come. And once you came, and once we came, then a group of high-ranking helpers had a definite task to do. And that task was to try to prevent you from accomplishing your goal. Because what is your real goal, as we told you this morning? Your real goal is not only getting you, is not only selfish, and not only serving the next level by giving them a vehicle and getting strength of will, but probably for the whole picture, the greatest real goal you have is the depositing of thoughts and true information about the next level in order to give these humans a chance to break away once again from the influences of this planet and from Lucifer that would make them cling to human vibrations. To lift them up.
To a higher level of that.
So, go ahead.
I just wanted to stress that you all do have the book. It sounds like we're not saying it. But it's one that Lucifer has assigned to you to try to get you off the track.
Now, I'd like to know. I'd like to know that you all know what we're talking about, because we could sit here and think we're saying it, and you could nod, and we think that you know what we're talking about, and yet you could go back and tell them something totally different as you try to interpret what we've talked to you about. So I don't know how we can get some clues from you as to whether or not you perceive what we're saying.
I guess I'm not that familiar with the teaching of the continents of Hindu or Buddha, any of that, and all of them, but I'm not familiar with what they all said,
Okay, but you don't even have to be familiar with them for them to even attack you with their teachings. An example of this is that Saryoti the other day, after having a good meditation, said, "What shall I do now? Leave my body?" Where did that thought come from? And then Saryoti immediately said, "Uh-oh, that's not right. Something's wrong here." But you don't have to have consciously studied or known anything about what they're all about for them, because they can give it to you if you'll just listen to them. They will even present them. Why do we say to you, don't even try to contact the next level through your heads? Because we know who will answer. And we know who will do everything within their power to convince you that they are. In other words, they're saying, if you want to call us the next level, call us the next level. I'll be the next level. Just listen to me. Because I can give you what you're after. And they can make it seem extremely appealing. Whatever it is that you might still have a weakness toward. Now let's say that weakness toward might be to be a great spiritual leader. In other words, you might still unconsciously still have that kind of feeling, just out of as a sideline, out of your admiration for the next level in this process. That would be a wonderful door for them to slip in to try to get your attention. Can you follow that?
So we need to mention this in our accounts so that the ones who are looking for truth can differentiate.
Absolutely.
Those and what we're trying to say.
Absolutely. See, in any religion that a lot of the minor religions or less advanced religions think that because they've been so saturated with the teachings of Lucifer, in other words, Lucifer teaches, stay a good human. Go to church, whatever your church, have your family, be ambitious, get good money, have nice homes, lots of kids. This keeps you on his planet. This keeps you at the human level. Now, he also appeals to ones who desire, or ones whom he can appeal to at different levels. Like if they're into psychedelics or drugs or loose living, or he says, that's okay. You do it, there's no harm. It's just experience. You're just learning lessons. You'll outgrow it if you find out it isn't good. Well, go ahead, do it. It doesn't matter. Now, that's the step below these ones here who have said, I'm going to abstain from that. I'm going to go to church on Sunday. I'm going to have only one wife. I'm going to have 5 kids and 17 grandkids. And we're going to remain faithful, whatever, members of whatever church throughout my life, and all my grandchildren and great-grandchildren will do the same. That's a strata above these, in a sense, even though these down here, stooping that low, sometimes can spring up here because they start seeing through this strata sometimes. Sometimes the prostitute can see through the average morality and see that it doesn't have much value, and could switch up here to the more advanced religious and become into the yogis or the Brahmins or the monasteries or the this or the that, that would eventually, should they continue, all find them heading toward learning to control their vehicles to the point through exercises and postures and meditation and abstinence and renunciation to learn to leave their vehicles, help the world with their thoughts, deposit their thoughts of what the world should be, and travel to influential individuals and preach through them. Stay human. Be good. Do the things of this world. Can you follow that? Now that's it's very hard for your brain to really see those two pictures clearly at the same time. Can you see what we're saying? Because people think of Satan as a low influence. They never think of Satan as a high influence. And he's the whole spectrum of every influence of this planet or of humanism. And these ones who attain to high, he teaches them to overcome all humanism, so to speak, even though his terminology is different. He teaches them abstinence from those things in order to convert the vehicle to something that the mind can go in and out of at will, and in order to do his service on this planet. So, in other words, these religions that know about these things think they have been lucky enough to find out the higher truths. And what they have really found out is the biggest trap. Can you see that?
Like, if you read the really good trap.
Oh, sure. Oh, yes. Yes. Absolutely. Oh, sure. Couldn't be anything else. Couldn't possibly be anything else. Now, I'll tell you how he could get you off, because he can have you compare him to the God during the ages of Moses. In other words, the Lord who was working with Moses and those tribes, it was proper at that time because they were new into the human kingdom. They were so primitive. It was proper to teach them no adultery, all these don't kill, don't steal, all these things, because it was appropriate to them. Take a wife, have children, do these things. But it isn't appropriate to those who have had an opportunity to develop enough, who should have outgrown that by now. Now, the first indication you have at the next level, send someone to publicly let the civilization know that they had reached the point where they should be outgrowing was when Jesus came. Nobody previous talked about outgrowing, overcoming that, other than some Lucifer and his crowd for different purposes, for wrong purposes. But Jesus' disciples, he actually taught that you've got everything that you know that we taught you a long time ago. That unless you hate mother, sister, brother, child, anything that would keep you from me, then you can't be my friend. In other words, he taught you that absolutely everything, riches, fame, anything of this world would keep you from the kingdom of God. And that's the first time that civilization had grown enough for a lesson like that to be appropriate. And so Lucifer, of course, had to jump in with Paul real quick. Like, oh my goodness, here they're letting it out of the bag. You know, how you can actually get to the kingdom of heaven. So we've got to get somebody in there and get him appointed as an apostle. Speak up.
It came before. I had a question about
wasn't the same kind of task. Something else, right?
It didn't apply. It wasn't the kind of task that teaching. The record that we have.
Sure what his primary function was?
It's not that important to you. I don't think you need to involve yourself.
I might be fooling myself, but the name was to say, the second part, it's clear, it feels very clear to me, it fits into what I have learned in this experience with you and things that I was learning prior to my experience, answering many questions about a lot of things, and it just makes common sense to me. I'm sure there's, I tried to tell you everything that you have told me about it's okay wrong. There's you like that. Okay. I don't feel like it's the area that I have to disagree with it. It doesn't feel like,
No.
there are some points, there's just one minor point that doesn't matter, as we said, using drugs and those low life sort of things. These are things tell me that it's spirit is growth and it's that spirit is growth. And certainly, that what you say is a facsimile of what you have taught us. Humans are seeking goodness, seeking the real kingdom of God, and they end up in those kinds of experiences that can be a stepping stone.
Sure.
You should not condemn me for having had that experience.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that wasn't to say people, a lot of times people start off on the Mr. Good strata and then see through it and go down here before they start going up here. Can you see that? Because they can say, this is terrible. This is boredom personified. I mean, if I've got to think of just living out my life, doing nothing but trying to increase my bank account a little bit, and going through exactly the same routine of shoving oatmeal in grandbaby's face and all these things, I can't imagine that this is what it's all about, that this is all there is. And a lot of times they will go from that to, or let's say that when they feel that way, they'll break off, say, from their family. And then, since they've broken off from their family, they think, well, why don't I try some of these other things? I never really tried them much before I took a family. So I'll try loose living. And then usually it doesn't take much indulgence with that until they begin to say, good night, I'm running my vehicle. I'm wearing myself out. I'm going back to the doctor every month wondering if I've gotten VD, and I'm wondering what these drugs are doing to my brain. And so this isn't the answer. Something's wrong here. You see what we're saying? So, yes, all of those things can be used, and can be used for stepping stones in the right direction. What we're saying is the real trap is not where you would think it is. The real trap is what humans see, most humans see, as a high spiritual development level.
In other words, humans are to break away from different stages in their life. It's when they get hooked so much so that they get into the more spiritual trips, and they feel like that's the only way that they can go. In other words, they're worshiping another God. When they worship all the things of the human kingdom, when they worship their wives or their children so much, they are taking their eyes off of the Lord of this garden. When you worship
the God of heavens.
God of the heavens. When you worship anything, then it is not right. It's to the extreme. Now, up until now, it was perfectly okay for people to live a perfect human life as long as they didn't worship Him. In other words, if the Lord came in and took everything away from them, if they were able to continue, then that proved that they did not worship them. But when they saw him go kill myself, because my wife died or my husband died or my children died, then that means that they were worshiping that kind of life. Now what you all are going to lead, hopefully, will be a new life for them. What is acceptable to society. It isn't a life with a family or having to have somebody to cling to or you have to have sex or you have to have drugs. In other words, you, we hope, will present to them a new kind of life, an uplifting life, a way up the next level, so that you can prepare the people for the next level to be able to come. Do you understand that?
If they, like what T is telling you, if you set a standard of a kind of life that they could shoot for by what you experienced in your overcoming, you're even telling them the difficulties of it. You're even saying you will encounter those who serve the forces of this planet. The more you try to overcome the ways of this planet, you're preparing them for it. You're telling them of every thing that could happen to them and proving to them that they still can please the real God in the heavens and can conquer if they're strong enough and if they want to badly enough. But the awful thing that, like he said, the worst thing that exists now is that the whole world has accepted a norm which is a lie. And that norm is to have the following human characteristics and practice the following human indulgences. To cling to people that you love, to drain from people, to be able to get your beef off on people, all of the human ways have been accepted as the norm, and it has to be changed. It has to be realized if the picture is going to change. Now, it'll change slowly, probably, just like the information left in the New Testament caused a slower and slower change and increased and increased. And the lower forces, though, as it increased, got in and worked harder and harder and harder to have it twisted and misunderstood. And you're going to try to even cover more of the bets than they were capable of covering, so that they will recognize the earmark of those things that would come in to distort what you have said. You're going to say it is something that each individual must do if he expects us to please his Heavenly Father or ever have the heavenly kingdom come here or to enter it. Each individual must do. He cannot do it as a unit. He cannot do it with anyone else. He has to do it between him and his Heavenly Father. The only reason he would ever do it with anyone else is if his Heavenly Father sent someone to help him do it. But he can't do it like my wife and children are going to do this together. And when they have children, we're going to teach their children to do it. I mean, you see what I'm saying? It's impossible. You can't do it.
The thing that I believe, and I think that that's true, we believe that a lot of people stay together in a family circumstance because society thinks it's supposed to be that. Yesterday we saw a couple that we had a chance to observe, or I did, and the way they treated each other, if that was love, I don't want any part of it, because they had no respect for each other. They didn't care to receive any help that their partner wanted to give to them. In other words, they couldn't communicate with any amount of decency. And it was quite obvious that they didn't care that they embarrassed each other in public. You see what I'm saying? Now, why are they still together? It has to be because they think I've got to be in this circumstance, because if I don't, I'm not acceptable in society. So I'll put on a front. But this was one time it was exposed in public.
Even the front was dropped.
Right. And so what you want to do is leave word that no longer is it acceptable. That it's Satan, it's the forces, the lower forces of this garden that is making people believe that you have to do that way. And he is using the words of Paul to keep you all, not you all, but the people of this garden, into something that is not of the Lord of the heavens, the idea.
You know, even if this little love relationship were ideal, it would be an addiction. When don't you know that when a human even makes love to someone, it's purely a selfish gratification of their own sensuality. Even when they are so in love, it's because they're both involved in the selfish gratification of each other and of themselves. It's designed to be outgrown. A thing that seems very sad to us is the way the gay world is becoming is pushing the gay world is pushing homosexuality, when probably these little souls that have come into these vehicles that are identified as gay have learned one major right step, that they shouldn't be taking a member of the opposite sex. And then the lower forces that come zooming in there and say, well, if that doesn't seem right to you, have a try one of your own. And get you just as involved in that as they can possibly get you. In other words, the gay world should also know that they find themselves in a condition that was a positive for them. Can you comprehend that? It was a positive for them. And the lower forces turned it into a negative for them. Because as a rule, most of them in their sensuality become even more sensuous than they had been when their partners were the opposite sex. And that's how the lower forces moved right in there with the addiction of this planet and says, I've got to keep you in my clutches. If you've outgrown wanting to have sex with the opposite sex, then I've got to have a substitute right there ready for you, because I've got to keep you hooked on sensuality, because that's what keeps you here. That's what makes the ball roll on this planet. Can't you understand that? And I think in fairness to them, some mention should be made, and certainly in some of them, to this, to help them, because it's so sad. They could take their condition as a positive for growth in the right direction, instead of having to promote the alternative they have chosen.
I'd like to add, when we were talking about the gods of this garden and the hospital and so on, back in the days when the Lord was here with Moses, and he was teaching them who to worship, they had, I'm sure, their Mahatmas, like the god of Baal,
and they worshipped idols.
Idols,
the half fish and half man, which is the book Sirius is about claiming that. Don't forget that this Lucifer that he's talking about too would even have you believe that he is the representative from the heavens. In other words, he's going to have you, if you say, oh no, my God is the God of the heavens, he said, what do you think I am? You know, I serve him. He will say anything that it takes to have you follow him.
We went into a place in California, one of these self-realization temples, I think, and they had all of these teachers, spiritual teachers who had attained everything, and they were all dead, or in the astral
Had left their bodies.
And there were 5 or 6 of them, and one of them, they had put Jesus' picture there. In other words, he was one of their teachers, but that was their way of getting into the...
Getting credibility.
Right, getting people to accept him.
Made our blood boil.
Right, because here he wasn't the top dog. He was way down the line, you know, from the teachers, but his picture was up there. Now, the one thing that we talked about that I feel like ought to be on tape earlier was Jesus, all the loopholes that we wanted you all to try to avoid having to leave open for individuals to twist and make of it whatever they like. And one was like when Jesus said, don't, if anyone says that I have come to you and come to them in spirit, don't believe it. Remember that? Now, who came to Paul on the street that day, on the road on that day, but a spirit that Paul called Jesus? Well, we know that it was the lower forces coming in to twist Jesus' teaching. Like Joe said earlier, that was they had to hurry up and get somebody in on their side in order, because they knew that the end of the New Age was beginning. The Old Age was ending.
Don't forget what the New Age was. It was these teachings about to make a splash.
What Jesus taught would not lead anybody off of this garden, off of this planet. And so they quickly got Paul into it, and he, of course, twisted everything and turned it and led people into, more into this garden than ever before. Now, there was another loophole. Could y'all just let it up? Did y'all write it down?
That we told you about.
We are members of the next level, and therefore easy for us to overcome it. It's so easy for them to come here now.
We told you that. I think he's referring to. Is that what you're referring to?
I don't know. I can't remember. That's the reason I'm asking.
Well, there was. Yes. Yes, and they will use that as an excuse. And you have got to say there is no. When they seek pure conduct, when they seek to overcome all the ways of this world, then they will get a booger as a prize. Because he'll do everything that he can to win them. Actually, he's more interested, almost as interested, if not more interested, in winning them than he is in just preventing them from accomplishing that. And you see that? And it wouldn't take you long if the booger came in so strongly as to have you reject what was being offered to you that required total purity. It wouldn't take you long until he would present himself in a way that would lead you in the path in his direction. If you're someone who had anything to offer to mountain, when we say something to offer, strength of will, ability to influence people, that people would listen to. It's like we feel like they even use extremely attractive vehicles because they think that people look at them so with such admiration that they use them as mediums for the assistance of Lucifer and his helpers. Can you not see that? Now, what was this? Remember another loophole?
Was it the loophole people would think that Jesus died on the cross for them and they no longer have to do it themselves?
You're going to point out that was a loophole, that the lower forces used that when he said, by this I redeem the world. By what I am doing, the world can be redeemed. I am dying for their sin. Now see how you can twist that? What he was saying was, I am dying to attract attention to the truth that I brought. If they listen to that truth, their sins can be overcome. But the lower forces turned that around to say, he died for our sins. I don't need to worry. I'm a sinner. Even Jesus said, none of us is perfect. So I don't have to worry about my sins because he did it for me. All I have to do is believe in him and do the best I can do. That gives me carte blanche excuse to be a very poor overcomer, to stop at almost nothing. Can you not see that?
But we said our boogers were much greater than Jesus deal with. I'm saying that it all depends on where you are in the growth, but what booger you use for practice is all the time. So you can't say that we have a chance.
Well, now we've made that clear, that until you're really making something of your life, there wouldn't be any reason for one to be thankful, unless one has chosen you because he sees you as a prospect to make something of his life. I mean, then you can be picked. But so they can't use, what we warned you about is they could, like Erodi said, I think it was Erodi said, they could say, well, you came from the next level. Certainly you had the strength to do all this because the reason you got there is because you had developed such strength of will. We're saying that just as you attempt to overcome this world and at that point get your prize by a booger, your same strength will then have its opportunity to develop to the degree of pleasing the real God in the heavens. Can you not say that? You've got to let them know they can please the real God in the heavens. There's only one way to do it, and it's total purity. It's the overcoming you had gone through. It's the overcoming Jesus taught his disciples. Did he say to his disciples, oh, now you all go out and preach sermons and get you a church someplace and then take a wife and have a bunch of kids and teach them what I've taught them to do. You know, he knew that what he taught them couldn't even jive with that. And maybe we should tell you here what we told the four who reside here, that why this nation was such an appropriate place for you to do the task that you're doing. Do you think it's okay to explain that to them? Let's say that why we couldn't do it in India or Pakistan or Nepal or someplace like that. Renunciation is a religion. It's there. It's a way of life. It's a quick route to get started up the steps of the Himalaya. If Chakoti came up in a family in India, and she said, when she was like in her late teens or something, I want to renounce my family and go the way I want to go find a master and develop a total devotion to my spiritual life. They would bless her. They would give her her blessing. She would wear a certain garment and go down the road, and they would be honored by her presence. They would give her food, give her money, and they would bless her on her way. It doesn't work. You have to work against the vibrations to get the strength of mind that you came to get. You came to a nation that was so indoctrinated into you can't renounce everything. You can't leave that family. You can't leave those children or those parents. You can't leave this money. You can't. This position. I've spent my life getting ready to have you become a doctor, and you throw it down the drain. Everything about the overcoming here was, you can't think of a place on the globe where it could have been harder. And did anybody bless you as you left the world? Did anybody say, and did you go out in little robes for alms in a way that they would quickly come and be honored to help you to get your next meal? No, it was just the opposite. You had preachers throwing things at you, saying, you look like a strong, healthy man to me. Why aren't you out working someplace? And you knew darn well that if you contacted anybody from the past, you'd get a long, hard sermon on how to get back where you belong and get back with the world. So you can see that the purpose of this happening here, it also protected you in a sense from that world over there, that it is so naturally and so easily leading you in the paths of heading for Lucifer and his assistants. You want to follow that? No, there's one other loophole we said, and that was how people quote so much when Jesus said, when they asked him what God was, and he said God was spirit. And we said that was a mistranslation. Either he did not say that, or when he said it, he hadn't awakened enough to know what he was saying. One of the two has to be the fact, because his God is not spirit any more than the Lord who worked with Moses. But he clarified that he was not spirit. The heavenly kingdom is not a spiritual kingdom, though the physical matter that it is made up of has a much higher vibration and greater capacity than the physical matter that the human kingdom is made up of. But it is a physical kingdom, not a spiritual kingdom. Just the opposite. The whole theosophical world tells you that the true way the civilization developed was etheric bodies, invisible bodies, and then as they got to lower vibration, they become transparent bodies, and then they become what's the next thing? Opaque, and so forth, until they became the dense bodies that they are, as they separated themselves from the true spirit form. In other words, they then have you believing that if you're going to reach the way you were intended to go, that you have to return to true spirit form, which is only done through the techniques of the very advanced disciples, children, renunciates of Lucifer and his classroom.
She's stuck in the astral.
Well, that's right, and she believes it's heaven. She even said in one of her last books, or whoever it was that said it, someone said it, and said it was she who said it. In other words, either someone wrote thinking she was speaking through them, or she was writing the book. More than likely, someone wrote thinking she was speaking through them. Said that finally I have reached heaven, and I float with the winds. I'm as free as the spirit to go where I choose to go in the service of my Heavenly Father. See, all the words even are the same.
It's a trap.
Huh? That's right. Yes, yes. They stay in the astral world. That's their trap, because they think they have found heaven. That's right.
See, they teach that. How many times have you all heard people saying, I've been told that I won't have to ever reincarnate again, because I'm too spiritually developed, and so I don't have to. Well, that's the worst thing that could happen to me, And so it's really, they programmed everything to cover just about everything when this new age began, hopefully to cover, hopefully to prevent people from doing this, because it will disrupt everything. You see what I'm saying?
And do you see
Well,
why